I call to order the September 26th meeting of the Los Alamitos Planning Commission. Could I have a roll call, please?
Chair DeVolt, absent. Vice Chair Riley,
Here?
Commissioner Andre,
Here.
Commissioner Quilty,
Here.
Commissioner Grose,
Here.
Commissioner Lowe,
Here.
and Commissioner Solfolcanic.
Here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, at this time, I'm going to move on to oral communications. If anyone here would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, this would be the appropriate time to come forward and do that. If you're going to be speaking on an agenda item, you'll have an opportunity to do that when that item comes up. All right, seeing no one come forward, I will close oral communications. We'll move on to approval of the minutes.
On page 5, it's the underline of the October 24th, 2018. The date is incorrect for Wednesday. Page 5. You're going to be looking under motion second that needs to be corrected. And other than that correction, I would move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
All right, and one abstention. Motion carries. So now we will move on to item 6, discussion. We have no discussion. We have no consent calendar items. So we move on to public hearings. Item 8A, small wireless installation in front of 4411 Catella Avenue. I have a staff report.
Yeah, I have one. Should we switch this up a little bit and introduce yet, or wait till the end?
I'm sorry?
Introduce.
Yeah, I should have done that during oral communications. I would like to introduce our new Development Services Director, Les Johnson. Les came to us from the city of Los Alamitos. He began last Monday.
That's unusual.
City of Indio. He came to the city of Los Alamitos from the city of Indio. Les, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, a couple words?
Well, first of all, I'm really pleased to be in front of you this evening. I'm just really enjoying, I've been here a week and a half now. I'm really enjoying the opportunity. It's just great. There's a wonderful staff here, and looking forward to hopefully a long tenure here. It's a great city. I'm really enjoying having the opportunity to know the community, and it's an amazing community. Incredible dynamic, a lot of pride in residency here. It shows, and the people I've met, and it's exciting. I'm looking forward to do what I can to assist the commission and development community, the citizens, et cetera, and just continue to maintain a high quality of life here in the city of Los Alamitos.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with the first report. Vice Chair Riley and members of the Planning Commission, conditional use permit 1807 is the consideration of a permit to install a small wireless installation on top of a new light pole to be placed in the public sidewalk in front of 4411 Catella. That's in front of Arrowhead. The applicant is here with us tonight, Alioshka Romero from AT&T Wireless back there. He'll come forward if later on possibly. Let's see, AT&T Wireless that he works for submitted an application for a new small wireless installation. These are the things we've been talking about for the last couple of months. To be located in the sidewalk in front of Arrowhead Products. The scope includes installation of an equipment in an underground utility box, so not hung on the pole like some of those pictures we saw earlier. The antenna would extend 5 feet 6 inches from higher than the top of an average light pole, so the full height of the installation with the new light pole is 34 feet 9 inches. The street light poles in Los Alamitos are owned by Southern California Edison, and they would own this pole as well. The zoning code does have requirements for wireless telecommunications facilities, so this is even though it's a small installation, it's considered a major facility because it's not screened on 4 sides. You see the antenna actually, and zoning code standards are met by this for major facilities and just for regular facilities. But I'll just read through the ways it meets it, the zoning code. Equipment is in an underground vault. It tends to blend in with the concrete pole. It's painted the same color. The unassuming antenna does not draw your eyes necessarily to the location. They tend to blend into the area they're around. This would be more than 200 feet from residential homes. It's more than 500 feet from other installations in the town. It doesn't have a lattice tower. Under its height for the planned light industrial zone could be up to 40 feet, but it's not 40 feet. It's not at the back of the building like we ask for many installations to be, because this is a totally different style of future antennas. So other things is, let's see, it's smaller than the buildings around it, so it does kind of blend into Arrowhead. Wouldn't be something that blocks your view of Arrowhead at all. And it's proposed in the industrial zone across from a commercial zone, so it's not really something that would bother anybody's residential stuff. We might have others come in later that will be there, but by that time, hopefully we'll have a new code that'll explain where those should be located and what's appropriate for them. Tonight, the commission will decide if the use is appropriate for the location. If approved, a lease payment would be negotiated by the city, but maybe not, because Michael will mention something in a little bit. I don't know if he was ready for that, but there is in your resolution that I gave you, number 5, I had said that the city would figure out a lease amount for the pole. We're going to remove that because the city attorney has something different to say. I'll let him describe that.
Do you want me to go ahead and jump in now?
Go for it.
We have evaluated the proposed condition, and there is a preemption issue with the California Public Utilities Code, which requires telephone companies, which is inclusive of wireless technology companies, it grants them a right to go into the public right-of-way subject only to limited time, use, and manner restrictions. We can't exact any sort of annual license fee or lease payment from these companies under that code provision. That would be a different story if this was a city-owned utility structure, but in this case, it's owned by Southern California Edison. So again, we would not be able to enforce a condition that would require an annual license or lease payment from AT&T in this case.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what you are looking at tonight is just really the pole, whether the installation in the spot it wants to go into is proper, according to what you think the code says. And staff recommends adoption of resolution 18-24, approving the request for a conditional use permit. And I also have other pictures of types of things if you want to discuss any aspects of the pole. There's where it would be located. So back to you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? All right. So at this time, I'm going to open up this item to the public. If anyone would like to come forward, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward, introduce yourself, and if anyone has questions for the applicant. And then if anyone else wants to come forward on this item, just come forward, state your name. Do you have a sign-in sheet there, Tom?
Yeah, I think we do, right?
Yeah, sign in and share your thoughts with us.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alioshka Romero. I work for Reliant Land Services representing AT&T. We are located on 1745 West Orangewood Suite 103 in the city of Orange. I am here representing AT&T, and I am open to any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the applicant?
I don't think I have any at this time yet.
Okay. Nothing right now, but if anything comes up, we might ask you to come back.
Sure thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak on this item? Okay. Discussion?
So I saw this in the packet, and then I was trying to figure out how we go about approving this at this moment without having gone through the actual code and trying to figure out what it is that we want and how we want it and where we want it. The largest concern, obviously, is approving something like this and then being held to whatever this is for future, I don't know how long it's going to take us to get this, but what kind of precedence does that set?
Yeah, and by the way, this can be continued, of course, if
Right.
you would
Well,
like to.
So here's a question I have for the city attorney is would not we be looking at what the existing code was when the applicant filed his application? So if we do anything future, he would kind of have been grandfathered in under the existing code?
That's correct. With the timing of this application, you would need to look only at the code as it exists at the time of filing. So that
Right.
means we're processing this as a CUP, which is, appropriate under existing code regulations of telecommunications facilities.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then if we do, because it is another item agenda to continue talking about these installations, if we, when we do come up with a resolution, this won't set any sort of precedent because we approve this one. It'll just be from then forward, that'll be the new, correct?
Yeah, if this project were to be approved tonight, they would obviously have their entitlements and be able to move forward as proposed, but that wouldn't bind any future decisions of this entity if there's a code amendment.
And if we approve this tonight, what stops another one from applying within another week and be holding us to that? They can't?
There would be no way to preclude anyone else from applying under the current regulations.
What I can say is that I do like this particular antenna with respect to some of the photos that we've seen in past discussions. And I'm very happy to see that they were putting the vault underground as opposed to a box up next to the pole. So from an
Agreed.
installation standpoint and trying to get ideas and looking at what we're doing for the code, I really like what they've done with this particular wireless setup.
Yeah, I think, I agree. I can just leave it at that. Anyone else?
Tom, quick question. You said that Edison owns this light pole. Does Edison own most of the light
Yeah.
poles in the city?
They do, all except for the traffic lights.
Does that
Okay.
include the new ones that we did on Catella?
No,
Or not
I'm
Catella,
sorry,
Cobble.
those are owned by the city.
Okay.
Yeah,
The ones in the median?
then the median are
Yeah.
owned by the city,
10.
because they're special.
Hundreds.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I forgot all about those, yeah. Yeah.
So if we can't, because I know that was part of our discussion in prior meetings, was trying to monetize this and get revenue for the city,
Right.
can we, if we can't do a lease thing, can we have a different application fee if somebody, going forward, obviously, because this one's already in, but can we have set a different application fee for a wireless installation than, a building remodel?
Generally, any type of processing fee like that has to be reasonably related to the actual time and effort expended to review the application. So it
Okay.
wouldn't necessarily be an opportunity to gain revenue in that sense. It would
Okay.
be intended to recover staff cost and time.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
And however, the Southern California Edison will probably get revenue out of this.
Of course they will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so at this time, unless, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, so that's taken care of. If there's any final discussion up here, or we can entertain a motion.
Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily have a ton of options here at this point, if it meets code.
Well, right, and I like it too.
Yeah.
I think this is an example of something that we might want to see in the other stuff that we're talking about, so.
For sure.
All right, so do I have a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve the resolution with the deleting of number 5. And that's what you'd want, and then moving up the others in sequence.
Oh, what we would do is just put removed by commission.
Which one?
Yeah, under that, so everything
So
stays the
eight-
same numbers.
18-24, I make a motion to approve with that correction on it.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Okay, thanks.
Congratulations.
Stick around, we're going to talk about other stuff in a little bit, about these polls. So.
All right, so we'll move on to item 8B, which is our continued discussion.
No.
Wait a minute, it is
Hospital.
not. That's
He's the
different.
hospital.
Yeah, item 8B is the minor modifications to the approved land use plan for the Los Alamitos Medical Center specific plan. Again, do I have a staff report?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. On February 22nd, 2011, the City Council approved the Los Alamitos Medical Center specific plan. The specific plan outlines a development plan for the medical campus over 3 phases. The hospital is requesting a modification to Phase 2 to allow for relocation of the central plant. The approved land use plan is divided into 3 phases as follows. Phase 1 has been completed. It included the vacation of the entire right-of-way of Kaler Street, construction of a new 3-story medical office building, and construction of a new 6-level parking structure. And again, all those components have been completed. Approved Phase 2 includes the demolition of an existing 24,000 square foot medical office building, reconfiguration of Kaler Street, the demolition of an existing 15,000 square foot administrative and office building, and construction of a new 4-story hospital facility containing 92 beds. The existing hospital count was also proposed to be reduced to 167 beds to 113 beds by reconfiguring some of the beds in the hospital. Phase 3 included the construction of a second 4-story hospital tower totaling 126 beds, construction of a new central plant to service the new hospital facilities, construction of a second hospital tower, and the plan also outlines that all these elements had to be completed and submitted for site plan review before the 10th anniversary of approval of the specific plan, or February 2021. The Los Alamitos Medical Center is proposing to modify the approved land use plan of the specific plan to create a Phase 2A and Phase 2B of the plan. The proposal is to relocate the central plant from its current location to the east side of the street at Kaler and Catalina Streets. It should be noted that during the approved plan, it was planned to have the central plant relocated to the roof of one of the hospital facilities and then put back to its current location. So this modification is requesting to relocate that facility to the east side of the street opposite of where it's currently located. The purpose of the central plant is to provide power, hot water, and air conditioning to the existing hospital and patient care buildings. The proposed modification will also change the overall number of hospital beds. As originally proposed, the existing 167-bed facility would be reduced to 113, and 2 new 4-story hospital towers would be constructed with 92 and 26 beds, yielding 331 beds. The proposed modifications will yield 303 beds through the proposed modifications. Minor modifications are permitted without formal amendment process. The specific plan allows the Development Services Director to review these minor modifications. It does outline some of the types of modifications that can be approved, and they do include modifications for relocation of the central plant and for reduction in, or in modification in hospital beds, provided it does not exceed the 331 that was approved in the plan. The proposed modifications will not affect the overall project development regulations. Site plan, if this amendment is approved, site plan review is required for any additional elements, new construction that occurs at the hospital campus. The central plant is subject to permitting by the state office, Oshkosh Office of Planning and Development. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the proposed modification and make a determination that the minor modifications to land use plan conform with the approved specific plan. Unless there are any questions, that concludes staff's report.
Thank you for the staff report. Any questions for staff? At this time, I'm going to open up the,
It's not a public hearing, but we do have an applicant who will speak on this, can speak to the item.
this is not a public hearing?
It is not. It is a minor
Why?
modification per the plan. It is administrative process. I brought this forth for planning commission review because there'd been so much input into the process. So we're allowing the planning commission to review that minor modification, which can be done administratively.
Okay, but we have, well, Agenda 8 is public hearings, and this is item 8B.
Oh, yeah, it should be under staff reports probably, so, yeah.
Okay, so can you give me some direction here on what we're doing
Given
with
that
this?
it was agendized as a public hearing, there's certainly no harm in opening it as a public hearing and see if there's any members of the public who wish to offer testimony.
Okay, all right. Agreed. All right, so I'm going to open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now would be the time to do so.
Good evening. Oh, there we go. Good evening. I'm Kent Clayton, the CEO at Los Alamitos Medical Center, and come here tonight just to seek approval from the Planning Commission on what was referenced with the site plan modification. And really, a couple things. This central plant is really critical as we celebrate our 50th anniversary this year of the infrastructure of the hospital. So this will allow us to really update and upgrade all of the infrastructure, which includes electrical, emergency power, boilers, heating, cooling to the existing hospital that is desperately needed, but also allow for future expansion, which falls in line with the specific plan of our overall master plan. This change is a couple things. One is a relocation of the site. It'll be going across a private street and will allow us to really have what we need in place. It also would be a change in the phasing. So the central plan is needed now, but it also would come before the next steps, which our intent still is to do the master plan and expand the facility well before the 2021 deadline for submission of the drawings. So that's what we're asking for tonight, and if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for the applicant? I actually have a couple questions. So I see that the number of beds is going down. Can you explain that to me a little bit? Like what's causing that? And
Yeah, the original intent of the specific plan was that with the new beds coming online, that we would move more towards private beds instead of semi, or even at this point right now, I've got 5 rooms with quad rooms. So that would be the decrease in the existing hospital.
but are the new buildings planning to have less beds in them as well? Or are they staying the same?
No, it would just be the existing hospital would be a decrease in the existing hospital beds and then bringing on the new beds. But in total, there would be a decrease in the existing hospital beds. We still will stay within the specific plan of the number of beds that was outlined in the 2011 specific plan.
Sure.
Vice Chair Riley, if I can add some more information to that. The specific plan called for 2 new hospital towers, one containing 92 beds and one containing 126 beds. The proposal is to amend the plan to allow for each tower to have 68 beds. So that's where the reduction occurs.
Yeah, I think that's
And
more
then
what I
also
was.
for the existing beds to go from 167 to 113. So that's where the net result is only 20 some odd beds.
So I guess that's kind of my question on the new buildings that are planned. there's a reduction in the number of beds in those new buildings? What's motivating that change?
The changes, well, I still have my architect here. He's
Sure.
probably a little bit more detailed on that.
At this point, we haven't really
Please say your name.
designed the two buildings. I'm sorry.
Say your name first.
Oh, my name is AJ Omar with CNA Architects here in Long Beach,
Thank you.
California. We haven't designed yet the two towers yet. We are in the process of doing that at this point. And however, the intent is to stay with the maximum required, which is the 331 that is determined right now by the specific plan. So therefore, we are going to try as much as possible with the parking allowed on site. I mean, what limits us is actually the parking available at the end of the build-out, the complete build-out of the site. But we are going to try to stay as close as possible to that 331, but we haven't designed the buildings yet to give you the final number of parking that is going to be required for those two towers.
Okay, parking.
I hope that.
Yeah, I know parking's a big
Yeah.
motivator for a lot of things in this town, in any town, really. I mean, so, okay, I was more just kind of curious about that, because I know, the hospital is an asset to the community. It's something that I think has a potential to be a really good thing and can drive a lot of people to surrounding businesses and things like that. And but some of these changes, I have to get my head around whether they're positive or negative, or kind of what they are and what's motivating those changes. So,
I have a lot of comments, but I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'll bring it back up.
Okay. I'd like to go back a little bit to when we started talking about the redevelopment. Phase 1 was what we now see, the medical office building that is located to the east of 3801, which is a brick building between that and Total Care Pavilion, which you'll see right over in that way. That was done to help relocate some of the offices or positions that were in the two-story building at the corner of Kaler and Catella. So that could be demolished in phase 2, and we had to build a parking structure, which we now know is existing right there. That was all part of phase 1 to accommodate the increased amount of patients that would be coming in and out of the new medical office building, since it would actually allow for more physicians to rent spaces or whatever they deem they wanted to do with that, which they also now have an urgent care on the very first floor. So that was phase 1. Phase 2 was to demolish the Kaler on Catella corner, the two-story, and to bring Kaler into the cul-de-sac area with parking, and to expand in phase 2 the ER across Kaler, which the city went ahead then at that time and gave the hospital Kaler, so one, the city didn't have to maintain it, and it could allow for these developments to happen. Phase 2 was only to allow for the removal of the two-story, the build-out of this part of the Kaler Street and bringing it into a nice little area, the new expansion of the ER with the tower on top equaling 4 stories, and the tower on top would be patient rooms. And then we were going to have a maybe, we didn't know if down the road, because you have to watch the medical industry to see what the is going to be needed. They had a independent tower in phase 3 that would then have another parking structure and another tower. That would be a patient tower. It's 4 stories, and that was where they were going to put the patient rooms. So we had a parking structure in phase 3 with the tower independent of the ER. Now, we have gotten this thing in our packet for this week, and I don't see anything that would be under the term minor altercation. This is a complete redo of the plan as I see it, that the Planning Commission spent a long time working with the hospital to approve phase 1 and phase 2. And as it was, what I received, I couldn't read the print even with the magnifying glass. Sorry to say that, but I couldn't. And the way the coloring was, I couldn't read the squares. So what we have now looking is a question mark of what they want to do. They have a quote-unquote a minor change, and they have it in this page, in this packet on page 4, under now phase 3, which I don't know because now the phases have all been changed around. construction of a central plant to service the new and existing hospital building. So I don't know where we're doing the service plant and what phase, because I've gotten pretty confused by the time I got through the packet. So I'm a little bit confused there. We have a lot of new changes. It hasn't been appropriately brought to the Planning Commission. It isn't appropriately drawn out. This is not a minor change from anything that I can see. Why are we now changing the parking around without coming with a better plan and showing us what we want to have? I'm a little bit confused as the whole thing as it sits right now and what we're doing. You've renamed the phases to accommodate your needs, but not what we originally had planned. We had phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We now have in this packet phase 2A, phase 2B, and 2B you've kind of squished around the previous phase 3 into 2B. And whether I'm opposed or not, I want to see better plans than what I saw brought to me over the last week. That would be my number one concern. And like I said, this is not major or minor. This is a major change in what we've been asked to do. And so these are some of my major concerns with this whole plan. And I'd like to have it better put together. I'm totally at a loss as to what we're really doing and when is it all being done and laid out, and if the hospital's really going to do it. We've been waiting for phase 2 for a long time and had no idea if it was even coming.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
This actually could have been handled at the counter, correct?
Yes.
Based on the information that you gave us, as a courtesy, you brought it
Yeah,
back.
and we're bringing it to
As
you
a
guys.
courtesy,
to
you brought
say,
it back
do you
to us
agree with
because of
this?
the, right.
Right.
So technically, we didn't have to actually, or we have a good staff, so they actually brought it to us. And that, but I didn't really see it the same way you saw it. To me, it just looked like the plans are basically staying the same. They're just shifting around the order in which they were going to do it, with the exception of moving the tower and the equipment from one side to the other. That's more or less what I got out of it, was just a shifting of how it was going to be done. I didn't see a change to the plans per se, other than that movement. I didn't.
If this was a minor change of only moving the one item, why are we changing everything else?
It's a change in the order of what they're going to do
Yeah, but
first,
that's
because the
change.
tower's needed
That's-
first.
Right, but when you look at it, it makes total sense, because when I first, I mean, I wasn't on the planning commission back when this was approved, but when I saw that originally they were gonna move the central plant to the top of a parking lot and then move it again, I mean, that seems kind of silly. Why wouldn't you just relocate it, and do it once instead of doing the work twice?
Correct.
So to me, this seems more efficient.
Yeah,
But these plans, if we approve them, do they not include the changes to the hospital structure for phase 2A and 2B?
It would. It would.
So that is no longer a minor change.
It's a phasing change. They're asking to have a split 2A and a 2B, with most
Should they
elements
not
of
bring in-
two being included in one of those.
Should it not be brought back to us then as the changes?
it's just a change in order, right?
Nah, you're changing the location. It would be like saying, I'm moving my garage around to the other side of the house for my convenience.
So Tom, if you can go back to the one that shows all 3 phases.
Whoop.
Can I have that?
Yeah.
This is where the existing central plant is located. They are proposing to relocate it to this side, where parking structure was proposed to be built. There's surface parking proposed to be located east of the new location of the central plant, and surface parking proposed in this location. There's new parking structure proposed to be here. The size of the hospital towers currently are proposed to be smaller in bed count, but again, that is in flux until they get a little bit better detail on the plans done. The plan does allow for these modifications to occur, provided they do not provide more beds than the 331 that is approved in the plan. And the plan also allows for the modification for the infrastructure of the central plant to occur. The MOB1, which is located in this area, is still proposed to be located in phase 2A, and that would be demolished with new parking put here. Again, these hospital towers will be put closer with the parking structure located in this area. So the elements of the plan are still there. They're just different order.
Well,
in which
except for one thing that was put into this plan. So what you're saying is they're going to have a tunnel. Because if you come down, let's go down Kaylor, right there. Okay, see that right there? That was designed to help fire trucks and any trucks that came in through there to come down, drop at the ER, and yet turn and go east on that drive next to the ER between those two medical buildings so that they could exit because they wouldn't be able to comfortably make a U-turn or safely make turns in there. So we're going to have a tunnel in there, or did we forget about that part?
AJ, can you want to talk about with the preliminary plans that you have?
Yes. Again, the two towers haven't been designed yet. We are in the process of looking at that and present it to the committee at that time. However, that drive that you see over there on that in that site plan here is going to be maintained. However, it will be probably going through under one of the buildings with the clearances required to allow for fire trucks and ambulances and the variety of vehicles that are going to be passing through. So will be still there. That drive will be maintained.
Any other questions, comments, or discussion?
Did you close the hearing? Did you close the public hearing?
I have not yet. But are we done with any
Do
kind
we
of
have a date that
questions?
phase
Yeah.
2 will be started?
You did not close the public hearing.
I understand.
Do we know if there's going to be a date where phase 2 would be started? The guarantee of an expansion.
The central plan, we know that it will be, the central plan will be submitted to the city. If this is approved today, we can start working on it and submit it to planning in the next probably month or so. And then will be submitted probably a few months from then to OSHPD for building permits.
And a plan to the planning commission for the new build-out or anything?
That is also to be worked on with the hospital, and we are in the process of actually proposing on that portion of the build-out, if you will, or the design.
The central plant, by the way, doesn't go to the planning commission, that part. The other parts, yes, the buildings would.
The central
Yes, sir.
plant facility would come for site plan review, but
It
it's
would?
permitted by the state.
Oh,
Yeah, the permitting
okay.
is done by the state.
Oh.
Okay.
Can anyone explain to me the intent of like phase 2A and phase 2B, and then there's going to be a phase 3, right? But why is phase 2 split into two phases right now? Is that?
The only reason is to actually build the central plan. The central plan is, as mentioned by Kent and the commissioner, the planner here, understand that it is very critical. The building is, or the facility is about 50 years old, and the utilities are almost reached their lifespan, and they need to be replaced. And therefore, this central plan is very critical, and that's the only reason why we moved that from phase 3 to phase 2 to be able to build that, and that's why we broke that phase 2 to 2A, 2B. And in the same time, that building on the south corner of Catella and Kaler, that will be demolished as part of that to accommodate for the parking required, which is already in the phase 2 proposal. You know.
Okay, and then do you guys have like any kind of a, dates for, construction rollout when different phases are gonna begin? I understand that that's gonna be subject to some change because you guys are still doing a lot of design and things like that, but, but to Wendy's point, we initiated this process a long time ago, and I think so far we've seen a new building go up and a parking structure go up, and then it's kind of just been kind of sitting for a while. And I understand that, I understand the whole plant thing, and I think it makes sense, right, to get that infrastructure in place first. I mean, I'm not a hospital planner, right, but to me, it makes sense to do that first so that you can support everything else you're going to build. But I think having some kind of idea on timelines on some of this stuff would be helpful.
And that's a very fair question. I was not here in 2011 when all this took place, and I know there was a long, lengthy process. But really, going back to the central plant, and I don't want to minimize it, that's why I'm going to bring it up again. That's a big investment by our parent corporation tenant, probably in the neighborhood of $45 million, needs to be done, critical for today. In terms of answering your question, when are the next ones going to come online? I can tell you today that we're going to submit before the deadline of February 2021. I will tell you personally that my top goal, I love Los Alamitos, I love the hospital. We need to expand. We're very busy. And I can't tell you the scale. That's why we're designing it right now. As Wendy pointed out earlier, healthcare has changed, and really we're unique. What we're seeing throughout the country right now is a lot of hospitals, inpatient services are transitioning to outpatient. A lot of hospitals have a lot of empty wings and rooms. We don't have that at Los Alamitos. We have quite the opposite, that we're a very busy hospital. And that's only been exacerbated with the recent closure of Community Hospital Long Beach. We've seen just an increase in visits to our ER. So tenant understands it's critical that we need to expand the hospital. The scale and scope of that is being looked at right now. But I'll tell you that my number one goal is to expand it. It's what this community needs, and we're going to move forward. But the first step is that I can't stress enough, we need to get moving on the central plant for the existing hospital and the future.
You mind if I ask a question? Yeah. One other question. Sure. Is there an actual potential, or what is the potential of maybe not submitting for phase 3 or submitting the drawings for the future building? I certainly understand, and like I said in the beginning, I understood why you were doing what you were doing, and I didn't see any change to the plans other than just moving things, shifting things around and moving the plant. But is there an actual potential where you come back and say we just decide we're not going to submit the plans, or?
There's always a potential for anything. Something has to happen at that hospital. The expansion, I guess, taking it from a minimal would be expanding if we demolish the front of the where the MOB2 is in the corner there by Catella. Could be, we might want to push out the ER a little bit. I don't think that's going to be enough, but in terms of just a minimal expansion, that would be one. We have 2 floors over at Total Care that are not being used. I'm trying to figure out what is the best use as a good steward to use those 2 floors at Total Care. Based on what I'm seeing in this market for our hospital, I don't think that's sufficient, but I'm going to give you honest feedback is that would be the minimal. I'm looking at with AJ and his group too, what is my potential at Total Care with 2 empty floors? And that's an exercise in itself, so I'm going through that due diligence. Do we do 2 towers? Probably not. We're looking at maybe just making 1 larger tower that still fits within the specific plan. So we're looking at a lot of different avenues of what we need to do for our hospital and community. And so that's where we're at right now. But I will tell you, this is the one that keeps me up all night long. We need to expand this facility. We've got a wonderful medical staff. We've got a great group of employees there. I think we're very involved, and that's our pledge with the community, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or CASA Youth. We're very involved in the community. What we need is to get that central plant, and then I will navigate with Tenet, our parent corporation, what I think needs to be done. I still think the tower is needed. A tower in California, not only does it take 5 to 6 years to do, but it's $500 million. In Texas, you could go build 2 hospitals for that, but that's just what California is like. Still need it. Tenet's very invested in this community. We have 4 hospitals in this area. I see great things for not only Los Al, but the company in this area, and I'm going to keep moving forward to navigate doing what's right for our hospital.
Thank you. Sure. Can I just get clarification on the phases as to where the tower was initially, as far as the build on that? Was that in phase 2 initially?
Which tower?
The plant, sorry, the plant.
Central plant was proposed to be relocated to the roof of a building in Phase 2.
In
And
Phase
then
2.
move back to its current location in Phase 3.
Okay. Oh, to its current location.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, the concern, for me is, the plant is needed for the current, it's pretty clear that the plant is needed, yes, for expansion, but it's obviously, it looks like it's needed for the current situation. So it would obviously be very disappointing if the expansion doesn't take place. That's the only concern, for me really, is that it stops after that because of the shift, but irregardless, it's still needed now. I mean, to keep the current hospital moving at the quality that everybody would expect, so that's
The
my
concern
concern.
is, though, I'm not opposed to the plant. I'm opposed to what was brought to us, which looks like if we approve it, we've also approved Phase 2A and Phase 2B without community discussion and community awareness. And that becomes concerning because the community has the right to weigh in. Even though I don't disagree we need to get the hospital moving in an expansion, it's way overdue, as we've already been, because we approved Phase 1 and 2.
But there's no change to the plans.
Yes, there is. There's major changes to this plan.
Well, I disagree in that regard. It's
So-
moving around, but
Oh, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Can you comment as to the motivation on something's changed at the hospital that makes this plant critical for the existing medical building? Is that, or the existing hospital setup? Can you comment about that motivation? What's prompted that?
Well, we were requested actually to survey the existing utilities within the hospital. And we found out that they actually have reached their maximum limit and they've reached their lifespan. I mean, now the hospital, especially the existing generators, which are almost 50 years old, and they are outdated. They don't have the capacity to accommodate one more plug, to tell you the truth, and they need to be replaced. However, replacing those in place will not be a possibility because of the required code clearances and the air quality where they are today, and that would limit us. Also, in addition to that, there's multiple Edison services for this hospital, which Edison today does not allow us actually to bring any more power because we have to consolidate those services. And now, with the central plant, all that will be serviced from the central plant location. So we'll have only one service from Edison, and then we'll be able to actually generate more electricity demand, so we can meet the remodels within the hospital and the future requirements for the hospital.
And is so this new plant will be constructed, and then at some point you guys will cut over from the existing plant to the new plant?
Oh, currently there is no existing plant. It's actually all the utilities are scattered throughout.
Oh, it is, okay.
Unfortunately, throughout the.
Okay, so you're centralizing all that.
It's going to centralize all that in one location. It will be controlled by 24 hours, controlled by one location, and in the same time we'll have the backup requirements for again emergency power, water, and we'll have up to date and more energy saving components for that the center plant.
And is this new proposed plant being sized in all aspects to meet the proposed future
Yes.
needs of this specific plant?
It is, and I mean, we could go into more details, but there is pretty much everything that it is sized for the future two towers.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, there's some work being done, a lot of work being done on the Cherry side of the hospital, Cherry Street side, how much of that plays into the urgency of this? There's been a huge remodel in there.
Correct. There is currently actually a remodel currently happening there to provide the hospital with more hospital beds that were needed, or converting actually some hospital beds, and that was already approved by OSHPD and any planning requirements.
So you just confused me. You just said increasing or keeping the same amount?
Increasing the med-surg beds, but removing the Jerry Psych beds. So it's equal.
And the Jerry site beds were obviously a part of always the count,
Correct.
and you're not changing any of them into private rooms.
Some are changed to private rooms because it is required by code.
Okay. So we have some private over there, so that took care of some of the needs, the urgency for phase 2, where you wanted to get private beds for infectious disease. Okay.
Question. The proposed site for the plant is, well, where it's intended, where it's proposed to go is now going to be a parking structure. And you're not going to build that parking structure, correct?
We will build a parking structure, but not in that location, just below it because we can't.
Okay. And there's going to be surface parking where the existing plant is and to the east of the parking structure, the east of the plant?
Correct.
How many, are we going to still have the same amount of parking slots?
Yes, yes. The overall count, and at each phase, we are satisfying the parking count.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Anything else for the applicant? No. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this, bring it back to the commission for discussion, or entertain a motion.
I have a question for staff. Actually, two questions. They're procedural in nature, nothing to do with the plan. There's a letter sent from CA Architects on September 18th to Planning Division. First of all, I agree with Commissioner Grose that this is not a minor modification, but nonetheless, is a letter of this nature sufficient for these types of changes? In other words, can they make changes of this magnitude merely by sending planning a letter and notifying them of the changes? Or is there some kind of review process that has to go?
Well, there was more than just a letter. That's the application that I received for my review for the minor modification. There were plans that accompanied that, and I apologize that in the copy it just didn't come out very clear in the exhibit. That would be page...
Yes, so it's very difficult to read those.
It just came out too light in the copy here. So that is just part of the overall packet for review. And again, this was the plan allows for administrative process of minor modifications. The request to modify the central plant and to reconfigure bed count, provided it does not exceed 331, are outlined in the plan as minor modifications that can be administratively approved. I brought this before the commission because I knew there had been so much input into the review and process for adoption of this plan that I wanted the commission to be aware of proposed modifications that were before staff.
I appreciate that. And the second procedural question is, since it is a administrative approval or administrative review, but it was agendized as a public hearing, was there any notice requirements, and if so, have they been met?
It was not a public hearing requirement. It was just put on the agenda under public hearings, but it does not require a public hearing. This is just, the zoning code allows for staff to refer any interpretation issue to the planning commission for your review and consideration. I took that opportunity to have the planning commission review the changes that have been submitted to staff. There's not a public hearing requirement required for a minor modification.
So no notice?
No.
No notice. Thank you.
If this were a public hearing, would we have sent notice out to everyone within that radius of the?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? This is a question for staff. So, you know, I'm not a hospital designer, and how do you make a determination on what's considered a minor change versus a major change?
I'm referring to the outline of the specific plan that allows the types of changes that can be considered for minor modification. There are a list of about 6 or 7 different types of changes to the plan that can be administratively approved. The central plant being one of them, and the overall bed count, provided does not exceed the 331, are 2 of the, I believe it's about 7 different modifications that can be approved administratively.
Okay, and this this falls under those,
Yeah, it does.
everything that you laid out here. Okay.
It's the SP 0901 is the specific plan that you're referring to that actually lists that out. I mean, the bottom line is, we're just making the determination that it meets that requirement, that it's in this plan, where it's,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and-
it's pretty simple.
And just a general thing I'd like to point out is, the specific plan was done a number of years ago. It's kind of like at the time, I remember talking about it, right? I was on the commission then, that, hey, this is like a 25-year kind of thing, And I think Wendy, that something like that would go without any kind of changes. And some of them might seem more significant because there's going to be technology advancements and changes in the market and things like that. We just, things like that are going to happen. This letter here outlines that, hey, there's some technology that's changed, that's come out now. It's not even something they were doing back then. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I kind of have to take the word of this person and trust that staff, does their homework on this kind of stuff. But I mean, I think that's a good thing, right? Because if we're going to end up with this development finally done in the next, 15 years, we want it to be done with the right technology, and we want it to meet the needs. We want it to be modern, and we want it to be efficient, and we want it to last for another, 50 years. So I think these changes, seem to make sense to me. And I think that there will be more changes coming, right? So we'll probably have some more of these discussions in the future, because it's kind of a dynamic thing. And when you're planning something that takes 25 years to execute, things are going to change. So that's
I
my.
don't disagree that things won't change, but you've moved a parking structure in a building. Is that a minor change or a major? Because what we allow here tonight, and I'm not opposed to the power plant part, but the problem is they brought more than that to the table, and they didn't do a presentation that was easy to understand. So if we allow them to make these kinds of changes without plans or without at least bringing it back and allowing the public to weigh in and how they want parking structures, because parking structure was phase 3, not 2B. It was a phase 3. It may not happen. So was the second tower. It may not happen. I'm sorry. The tower that would be, which is being moved over now. This tower here was phase 3. The purple is phase 3. Now they're changing it to 2B, and they're adding the beds. You're going to have, on the light blue, you'll have a tower there, and they're moving that tower over and potentially putting a tunnel underneath. Those, I guess, are considered minor changes that if another building came to us and they brought us plans that they wanted to alter significantly, they could just go and do it with approval of staff, and that's what you're saying. We have to be careful what we do here because it sets precedents for other buildings that we can allow in our town. It'd be like saying the hotel all of a sudden decided, I want to shift my building a little and move my pool right up front instead of in the back. Well, that's okay. It's not if we don't approve it.
If it's in their plan, it's okay. I mean, here's the thing.
The plan was not designed, the phase 3 was not a given, okay? This was to have to come back to us.
I understand.
Phase 2 was a given, and phase 2 was not a parking structure. It was only the build-out of the ER and a tower on top.
But staff just informed us that those changes are listed in the specific plan, SP 0901,
understand.
as minor modifications. So we can't at that point argue. It's already in the specific plan,
Adding a parking structure and changing a building is a minor modification.
according to the specific plan, yes.
Am I being corrected on this one? And I'll ask the attorney, is that correct as a minor modification to redo an entire plan?
The plant was listed as,
Not the plan.
the
Parking
plan.
structure was in phase 3, and the purple building,
Yeah.
the standalone building was in phase 3. We were told we didn't know if it would occur, okay? The only part of phase 2 is the build-out across Kaylor of the ER and a tower on top. That's all phase 2 was, along with the demolish of the 2-story building at Catella and Kaylor. Is that a minor change when we take phase 3 and push it into phase 2? Not that I'm 100% opposed, but it's not a minor change. And so we set a precedent for other architects to do these in steps and then change them like this.
Yes, so there is, and I'll let Mr. Perea jump in if he wants to add to this. There is a bit of discretion here in this determination because the specific plan doesn't address whether or not a shift in proposed phasing necessarily falls within this minor modification. We've listed a number of items that are expressly listed as changes that would fall within that classification, but that, as written, is not an exhaustive list. It says including but not limited to. Really, the discretion here is a determination to be made by the Planning Commission as to these other elements, presumably the phasing, whether or not that conforms substantially to the intent of the overall plan as approved. So that's really before you.
If I can also add, this is the planning document, so this is a conceptual site plan. This is not site plan approval, like where the hospital, where you have an approved project where it says, you know, how high, how big, how tall, how many parking spaces, where your pool is located. This document, the specific plan, is a planning document with a conceptual site plan. And it has a list of phasing elements to complete that three-phase plan. So what is before you is modifications that are permitted per the plan, but there are changes in phasing that would occur to make that happen.
But proving that allows for it to go forward like this without city input, or the residents' input.
Okay.
And that's unfortunate that we wouldn't want to take into account the residents who, actually, when we did this, the place was full.
But there's no guarantee that previously that phase 2 would have ever been completed, correct?
Correct.
Right.
There wasn't, except they did indicate at that time and made a commitment to us to do phase 1
But
and
let me
phase 2.
state that again. There's no guarantee that they could have followed through. They could have decided not to, correct?
That is a possibility, yes.
They could still do that and not do anything else
That's
either.
absolutely right, but that's my point. So what we're doing right now is we're making a determination that the proposed minor modification, which is listed in the specific plan, conforms to and is consistent with SP 0901.
I understand that,
So that's all we're really dealing with right now.
which goes beyond what I consider a minor modification.
But that's opinion because it's listed in it as
Dee,
minor
can you give her
modification.
the minor modification lists that's in there? Show it to her. Maybe I don't know if she's seen that.
These two pages.
The pages that are about minor modifications, it has a list of what can be changed as a minor modification. And I think it's at the bottom of the first page, it says central plan and stuff like that.
Well, and since they're going to be moving that parking structure, will it be coming back in front of us for site plan review at a later
Every
date?
element would come before the planning commission for actual site plan review. Again, this request before you tonight is modifications for the central plant and which would allow for planning commission, for the applicant to come before the planning commission with their plans for site plan approval, which would subsequently require state permits.
Okay.
So with any element, there would be further planning commission review.
So we'll be seeing this several more times.
You will be seeing several more phases of this, yes.
Okay.
Do you need some more time, Wendy?
No,
Any other questions, discussion? Does anyone like to
Can I
make
go
a
ahead and,
motion?
are we making an actual motion on this then at this point?
That's what we're looking for, yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve that the proposed minor modifications conform and are consistent with the Los Alamitos Medical Center specific plan, SP 0901.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I do oppose.
I oppose as well. Motion carries. So we will now move on to the next item.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 8C, which is zoning ordinance amendment 1803, which is where we are continuing to talk about small cellular sites. Staff has asked that you continue this to the next month, but however, you can talk about it tonight. And I think Commissioner Grose would like to talk about some pictures that we put into the report. And then there are people in the audience that may want to speak as well, or at least hear what you guys talk about tonight. But this is that continuation of that zoning ordinance amendment for small wireless telecommunications installations. So.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing and invite people to come forward and speak on this item. If you'd like to do so at this time, please sign in, state your name. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Diane McClellan, and I work for Verizon Wireless in the Small Cell Real Estate Division. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak on this item. What we are asking is
Could you adjust the mic and
Sure.
speak into that a little more? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What we are asking is for the, for planning to, while the zoning ordinance is being drafted, we're asking for you to have a stakeholders meeting. This is something that some of the surrounding cities have done while they're revising their wireless ordinance as well. City of Pasadena, most recently, City of Pasadena, Costa Mesa, and your neighbor, Seal Beach. What we usually do in the stakeholders meeting, it's open to all carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, and because the assets that we would normally be attaching to here is owned by SCE, Southern California Edison. Edison usually comes and they explain the process for attaching to their streetlights, and then the type of designs that are available to us. We are bound by a master lease agreement with SCE, so we only have a certain number of designs that we can utilize to attach our equipment to their streetlight poles. So that's something that will come into play when we do come before Planning Commission. When you do see the different designs, because there are 3 different designs that SCE allows. So it will illuminate for you SCE's process, and then it allows us, the carriers, to provide information on our technology, the limitations of our equipment, and some of the limitations of the emerging 5G technology, because that is brand new, and we are very excited about it, but there are, because it is brand new, limitations on the ability to shroud and things of that nature. So we would like the opportunity to speak with you in an open forum with all the stakeholders while you are drafting. So if you choose, you can incorporate some of that into your amendments. And that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item? All right. See no one come forward, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Any discussion, questions for staff?
I asked the staff if they would do some pictures because I've been riding my bike around all over the place. I ride all over between this town, LaSalle, Rossmore, Seal Beach, Long Beach. So I just wanted to take note of some of the things that I noticed in LaSalle so that we could think about these when we're thinking about the plants. On the bike path, we have the poles, and maybe there is some way that we can think about if we do them and have these installations that we allow to be put down through the riverbed area, how we might want to look. Doesn't necessarily mean changing out the poles, but it would be a great place to have them. I just wanted to bring them to your attention to take a look and think about if there is something that might be feasible that we could address when we're looking through these that might work. It would be a great area. It's going to be out of the way of everybody, and to me, it just works. And then I got to thinking about alleys, so that I wanted pictures to give you guys some thoughts to think about. If we looked at alleyways as well, so you go between housing, and you have, I know Old Town, East, West, Department Row area. I can't remember all the places that might have alleys. But at any rate, some of those places, and we could actually think about having ordinances that say, okay, so many feet back from the actual street, but we still have plenty of poles, and that would give us areas that we could look at once again, and a lot of them are going to be the telephone pole fashion, so let's think about if we use these, how might we like them to be done? That's all there. And again, more telephone poles, just to kind of look at these areas as possibilities. And then again, we wanted to look at streets and industrial areas so that we can see the different poles to think about how we might want to put them. I know that when I've been in different towns, I've been seeing different styles. I've seen some that are really big and gaudy. I think we had that one picture of them where they were pretty massive. Most of the people that use those actually put them more out of the sight of the community. So I just want to kind of give you something to think about while we're doing them. Not all poles, I noticed, were the hollow or what we could put things up and down. Some of them were the cement or concrete style or whatever they call it, granite style. So we have to ask ourselves how we can put things there that might be workable. And that's all. I just asked for pictures so that we can look at these and think how we might want our city to look. And I think we can come up with a plan when we get it all put together that will work in many areas in our town without causing any problem. So that was all.
I'd like them all to look like the one we approved earlier.
That might be nice, but it may not. It may be realistic.
Right,
But
yeah, I
wanna
understand.
keep in mind the telephone pole too and the alleyways, which don't impact the overall looks if we kind of keep it a certain distance and things like that. So that was all I wanted
I
to
think for the
kinda-
people who live over there, it
I
would.
do live over there.
I know,
So,
but
yeah.
I'd be annoyed if I lived in apartment row and that was stuck on the alley behind me and I pull
Don't
in there
wanna
every
do
day to
that
park.
kind of look. I
So-
want us to make them nice, but I
Yeah.
want to think about all the things that we can use.
So one of, the questions we don't really know at this point is the range. So although the bike path sounds like a great idea, but the fact that, if we don't know the range of the antenna, you can stick one on the bike path and it has zero relevance because it doesn't actually accomplish anything in that spot if the range is small because you're not getting the right? I
Yeah.
mean, they're putting this on Catella for a reason. You've got traffic and people with their phones using it at, thousands a day. So there's a reason for that. And so the sparse areas might be difficult. The other thing I look at is, what they put it on is a street light, not a telephone pole, if you will. So you look at these telephone poles with the crosses on them and all of that stuff. If the poles, in fact, have to be replaced, now you are going to draw attention to it 100% because you're going to put something in that doesn't really probably resemble, unless they go back and put in another, pole with the crosses on it to hold all this. So I don't even know if these, again, not knowing how this all works, I'm not even sure if these poles actually work for them versus a street light pole. The other thing, I guess, one more thing I forgot to ask when we approved the other one, not a big deal, but are there other carriers that would now be allowed to put additional equipment on that pole, or has AT&T staked that pole as theirs and nothing else can be applied to it?
It hasn't been applied for yet, but I could see that happening in the future.
On the
possibly.
same pole?
Well, we started off with the large installations, and those now are co-located. They have other companies' antennas on them as well.
Because what they did was,
You'll notice that a lot of them have those, they have 3 array on the
Right.
top, and then now there's a lot of them with the second set below.
well,
and
so like
stuff that.
what they did was great, but what is on that photo is not.
Yeah.
So that's a concern.
Yeah, I'm not sure what all that is there for. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of technical aspects of this that we don't know, considering range and things like that.
Correct.
Maybe we should take the prior speaker's offer and have the stakeholders enlighten us a little bit before we proceed on this, so we have a better idea of what we're doing and what technology's out there and the limitations. So I'd like to have them participate if it's okay.
I agree.
I agree.
I think it would probably be beneficial and save a lot of work for staff too, and have them come to us instead of having you guys go out and try and gather all this information. So I'm in favor of that as well.
We can do something.
So how would we do that? Form a subcommittee and schedule a special meeting, or a full commission?
I guess we'll chime in. I'm not sure exactly how things have been done here, but a lot of times, my experience has been with a subcommittee being established. It allows for a meeting to happen, hopefully if schedules allow, in an afternoon, because a lot of the carriers can be here. A number of questions have come up in my mind just from what you've said in these exhibits. I know that where I was prior, that utility would not allow for a power pole to have a wireless antenna attached to it, because they have a clearance area that they cannot allow anybody but their own workers to be on because of the the live wires. But there's a lot of questions that I think we need to ask. The issue of do these smaller antennas allow for multiple carriers and so on and so forth. So my recommendation to you would be to see what we can do. Maybe if could be a subcommittee assignment, we can see if there's possible we could do a late afternoon, early evening meeting as recommended or suggested by the Verizon representative. Get all the carriers together, SCE here, and have hopefully a really good constructive workshop discussing this matter.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, that vault, is that AT&T's vault, or can another carrier somehow plug into that vault, or do they have to put another vault in next to it or underground for their own stuff? So,
Yeah. I mean, we could spend months discussing this that
Right.
I know nothing about.
well, none of
you
us, I mean,
know?
yeah, but those
So
are the
I'd
type
love
of
to have
questions that we need
meeting.
to,
Yeah.
that we need to know in order to make an educated decision.
So if we want to form a subcommittee, is that something we can do right now?
I'm sorry?
Form a subcommittee?
We were
To-
just
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And how do we do that?
Well, who would be available to meet during the day, and no more
So
than 3?
I can.
3 or?
Why don't you,
And no more than
and Mary Ann?
Was it 307?
Three
yeah.
is 3.
Wouldn't it be better just to have them come and present to all of us? I think that'd be more, I don't know.
Could I make,
We can't have
can we
more
do
than
maybe the subcommittee meet with them, get them going, discussions, and help put together, and then have them come here with our subcommittee to present it, maybe? Because it could get very long and detailed, but if the subcommittee tries to put together and gets a lot of this answered, we can consolidate it down, maybe that would work a little better.
And I think that subcommittee forum allows you to do a lot of things that you can't do in this kind of environment, unless I'm misunderstanding things, right? But, have more open discussion, more Q&A back and forth. So I think that's the right format, I think.
Going to see again, which commissioners are available during the day to meet?
And Mary Ann?
Okay, we'll get a motion to have those 3 serve in the
I'll
subcommittee.
make the motion for those 3 to serve.
Commissioner Kupchak, Commissioner Colton.
I'll second the motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to mention too that just because the subcommittee members are being a part of this doesn't preclude you from, if you have any questions, feel free to email us with those questions in advance to the meeting so we could bring them up, or your fellow commissioners. But certainly you can be involved, I guess, from a distance, from the standpoint of giving us any questions you may have that we could then discuss during that meeting.
Sure. Thank you.
You guys will arrange the meeting at that point and let us know. Okay.
Okay, anything else on this item for tonight? Or are we? Yes, we'll continue this item. Do we need to make a motion or anything on that, or we just continue it?
Let's get if we could, just please have a
Okay.
motion to continue as recommended.
Continue.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to continue this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carried. All right. That brings us to item 9, items from the Development Services Director.
I just want to say, tonight is my last night with City of Los Alamitos, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you all, and it's a great commission, and I wish you guys all the best in the future, so thank you, and it's been great being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Best of you as well in your
Best to you.
retirement. Enjoy.
I heard you were going to the city of Indio.
Yeah.
Good one.
So item 10, Commissioner reports. On that, I just want to thank Andy for your participation here. It's been really great. Losing Stephen, he'd been here with us for a long time, so it was a big loss for the city, but you coming in has been really great. So I appreciate everything you've done for the city and your participation here. And last, I want to welcome you, and I look forward to working with you. I hope you have a long tenure. I think, Steve Mendoza was here for something like 9 years, and I think that kind of longevity is beneficial. The historical knowledge and the value you get from it is a really good thing. So look forward to working with you, and that's it for me. Anyone
Can I make a
else?
motion on that?
No, I'd also like to thank Andy. Enjoyed working with you and enjoy your retirement. Last welcome. But I do have a question connected to one of the agenda items. The last meeting, with the 24-hour drive-through, they were supposed to provide us with a letter that they had an agreement with Starbucks.
We have
We have
that.
it. We're going to talk to you about it afterward. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else?
I want to thank Andy for thinking of me recently. And welcome to our, I do like my new name. Thank you very much. I am going to use it all the time now. It is a good town. It really is. It's probably, I have to tell you, the people in this town passionately care about this town. And that's why I want to represent them, is that I really do care how they feel.
Wahoo's is open for business.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't been there, go check it out. It's very good, and the service is good, and it looks great.
I heard you're there every day.
I would like to be there every day. Not quite, but I easily could. So, yep,
Anyone
finally got that done.
All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Question.